Well, you say yes. I can tell you exactly how that happened. I had a call when I was at Air Lyndhurst doing a session by coincidence for a film called Ghost Recon, which is the game Ghost Recon, Ubisoft game. They want to get into movies apparently, and they decided to make a short movie, 20-minute movie, based on Ghost Recon. And they spent millions on it. I mean, they've done it. They've got Ridley Scott's production company to run it, and a composer I work with a lot, Daniel Pemberton, did the music. So I was there conducting an orchestra doing that, and I got this call from the LPO. So I was kind of thinking video games, and they said, "Would you conduct a concert in September with the LPO at the festival hall, video game stuff?" So obviously only a fool would say no to conducting the LPO at the festival anyway, whatever. To be honest, if they'd been doing, I don't know, hits from The Little Princess or my daughter's favourite Disney films, I would have done it, because at the moment the LPO is definitely, right up there with any orchestra in the world, and they have that. I go and listen to them a lot in London anyway, and they're phenomenal. So I probably would have said just whatever it was, but actually the video game thing appealed to me as well, because it kind of exactly matches the span of my life as well. And I was there. I mean, I was born in 1969, so the first proper video games came out in about 70, 71. Space Wars and those sort of. No, Space Wars was earlier, but then the sort of Pong. Those first little games everyone knew, and obviously I wasn't aware of them, but I did have an Atari console when I was 8 or 9. I did have the ZX81. So I kind of had fallen out of playing them a little bit recently, but I'd seen it all the way through, and so the idea of going back and looking at the early ones, the new ones as well, was just kind of fun. I have to say, the curveball was that we got through the whole conversation about doing this concert, and in my mind I'm thinking, well, they've got all the charts. I'll just be, basically I'll have to learn the music and turn up and conduct. And then it emerged right at the end of the conversation. They wanted to record an album of the music beforehand, which is, I mean, particularly when we're using technology and drums and synths and stuff, that is not a straightforward thing to then just knock that out before you've got a live gig, and it had to be quite carefully planned. So the album, and there was no music, so I had to take everything down by ear or do new arrangements. So it has turned into really quite a big, big tricky project actually. But I don't regret saying yes to it. I had a list from the record label X5, who, I mean, they've never done a video games album before, and they mainly do. What's the clever name for people? I think it's a record. They call it an agglomerator label or something. They basically collect music from other sources, and they release compilations, albums, or I've got the wrong term there, but there is a term which means that they collect. They don't commission new recordings usually. I don't think, but they did commission the LPO 2 years ago to do a best of classical albums, and they recorded the greatest classical hits. So they had a relationship with this label. The label said we'd like to do an album of video game hits. I think they pretty much went down the list of what the biggest selling games were.
Sure.
And did a bit of YouTube work. So the list wasn't bad actually, but I thought when I listened to it all, it was a bit heavily weighted towards, the bombastic big Subcomina Burana or the the really Battlefield. We're doing Battlefield 3, but you don't want that to be the whole thing. So I sort of took some of those out. I wanted some things that were a little bit more obscure, possibly. So I'm doing maybe not going to do it in the concert, but on the record there's a Michael Nyman did a music for a game in the late 90s. So I'm doing a track called Enemy Zero. The game was, and although the game itself I don't think was a colossal success. I mean, just to do something by the British composer and see what would Nyman do with a video game. So I made a few choices based on not being too obvious sometimes, but then I did do most of what's on the list, and I just tried to balance it a bit more, so we had a bit more music to go at, and it wasn't just going to be an onslaught of double snare drums and grand casa and military stuff. So that was it. It was fairly unscientific the way I chose it. It was sort of like stuff I like, and stuff I like anyway, and I found a track from a good video game and I thought, well, yeah, this is what I like. So it's always more fun in the project if you've got some choices, because you can put your own stamp on it a bit more. Sure. I think it's incredibly important, and the only you need to go online and look at how many hits if you go and find a YouTube, like I was checking out some games, you go and put in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 theme tune, YouTube. It's there, and it'll have a couple of million hits with people saying, "Wow, this really takes me back to when I was playing that second version of the game, and I loved." And because it's on particularly the loading stuff, or the menu music, or the big themes. I mean, you must hear them so many times, and I think they become really interwoven with how you feel about the game. In the same way that the film music does, and even the ones where the music is not great. I mean, actually, I'll tell you what I did do. I started going back and listening to some of the more 8-bit stuff, which I hadn't heard for years and years. Some of the early 80s or mid 80s games. And as soon as you hear the sound, in a particular game you've played a lot of the missile hitting the silo or whatever the thing you hear is, it takes you straight back, and I realised that the memory of those sounds is just in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. I have to say, from looking through it all, I think it feels like the music side of video games is kind of where the music was in films in the early 30s. I mean, it feels to me like it's not yet. I mean, it's only just starting to get its potential, reach its potential, or even begin realising it. Because it's only a few years ago where you'd be given 2 megs to play with, I think, as a designer for music and the whole game. And now they're going down. They're using some big film composers. Simmons done scores, hasn't he? Harry Gregson Williams and people like that. But they sort of, but there's a colossal amount of music in a video game, and I sort of feel like the music out there so far, I wouldn't say we were exactly spoilt for choice with loads of great music, to play. In all honesty, it might be a bit unfair, but I think it's kind of developing, and certainly it's nice to be doing a video game concert at that stage. Imagine doing a concert of film music in the early 30s. People would think it was a joke.
Yeah.
They would have thought, film music? What are you doing a concert for film music for? That's just stuff that goes
on the film.
Just goes on the film, Whereas, and they had great composers like Korngold, who weren't, who's legendary now. Was supposedly one of the most talented composers since Mozart, and he was supposed to be the new Mahler, all that stuff. I mean, he wrote a great symphony at the age of 11. I've forgotten the name of, but a pre-film thing. Oh. So he was fantastic, but no one thought much of his film stuff to start with, I think. So I think the video game industry may be at that kind of stage, which is interesting.
So, like you said, if the film music gets more, the memory of it,
yes,
makes it important as well.
I think it does. It does. Well, bear in mind, I'm in a slightly strange position, having been given this job and not having played that many of the most recent ones. And some of my younger friends, my friend Josh, for example, who's 20, who plays a lot of these, thinks it's a joke that I'm doing this because I know so little about the more recent ones. So from a purely I'm just going on a purely musical point of view. The ones in recording so far, which have been really good, Fallout, for example, was surprising, because when I listened to that, that was on their list, and I almost thought, I'm not going to do that, because it sounded quite odd to me the way it was recorded on the game itself. But that sounded really filthy in the studio with the orchestra doing it. So I love doing Fallout. I mean, something like the Metal Gear Solid Sons of Liberty, that's, it's quite cheesy, but that sounded great, and I like that. The Call of Duty ones, I think, Call of Duty, for example, the 4, that's just beautifully done. The sound design in that, in the back. I mean, obviously it's been done by one of Hans Zimmer's clever guys in LA, and you can tell they spent days in it. Because I've got a guy who's helping me with that a little bit, because it's just so much work to do this and do all the sound design for the background. And he said, he's a bit of a genius, and he said it's hard work getting this to sound as good as that. So I appreciate that side of it, and I mean, I like the ones we've done. We found these versions the Boston Symphony Orchestra have done of Super Mario, which we're doing today, which are kind of like, imagine the BBC Concert Orchestra doing Super Mario. They're kind of quite light music, like they sound like sort of 60s TV music in a way, and I quite like some of that kitsch sort of stuff. So I quite enjoyed the kitsch thing, but I haven't got a great deal of knowledge about, actually, as far as game playing goes, what the best music to go with. I mean, I'm not really in a position to comment on that, although I have. This has got me my interest going again. I'm thinking an Xbox 360 might be on the agenda This is out of the way. But the reason I stopped playing them is because when you work for yourself, like I do at home in the studio, they are deadly. You know, they're the first time you get to the point where the work isn't going very well, on goes the Xbox. So I kind of thought I'll avoid them because I think they're a waste of time. But in fact, looking at them, researching this project, it's astonishing what, you know.
My PlayStation is downstairs, my TV is upstairs.
Very sensible.
Yeah.
Very sensible.